This is a book review of Marvel Comics in the 1960s. This is an issue-by-issue field guide, and it's by Pierre Comtois. About 222 pages. It's all in black and white, so it's all black and white, all the way through. No colour, other than obviously the covers. And it's from Twomorrows. There's the spine and back. There you've obviously got pictures of the creators, and there's quite a lot of information about the creators in there. Now, it's part of a series because there is a Marvel's 70s one, and there's also Marvel's 80s. And I did notice looking online, there seems to be an expanded version of the 70s one. Hopefully there's an expanded version of the 60s one coming out. So it'd be great. But because this came out in 2015, I assume this issue is out of print now. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Twomorrow's website is always a great source. And not only that, they also have a digital version. Now, there's also other books very similar to this. There's a really brilliant one that's available on the Kindle. Notice when I was doing a search one time, there was a Marvel Comics Index guide or something like that. And it was like massive, full of thousands and millions of bits of information, opinion, guides to all of the comics, and features actually probably more than in this. However, this is a lovely book, and I'm just going to go through it. I'm just going to go for the right start. And you've got initial page, obviously Jack Kirby, because the one thing about this book, which is very good also, it's a lot of background. So you've got lots of, about Jack Kirby, obviously his artwork he did before, Young Love, Guilty, etc. Also got a picture of Martin Goodman, who to me is probably the most important character in all of Marvel Comics, and sadly seems to always be slightly forgotten about, but the guy that, the publisher. If he hadn't created Marvel /Timely /Atlas /millions of companies, then you wouldn't have had all the great characters. So Martin Goodman, great that he gets a picture in here. There's obviously a little bit of information about him. And secrets behind the comics. And then early formative years. And you've got Rawhide Kid, which I think is probably apt because I think the first comic was Rawhide. And you've got that. Fantastic Four #1, of course, the classic first issue. And, well, recently there was a reprint that was really amazing. They've done a lovely print, and still great, even though I've read it 1,000 times. The first issue, obviously it looks very primitive compared to what came later, but it's still brilliant. It must have been amazing to see it on the However, this is one point criticism I have of this book, and there's a few criticisms which I will mention as I go through. So you've got Fantastic Four #1. It's got information about the script. It's got information about the artist, pencils as it puts there, as well as George Klein inks. But it doesn't obviously mention the letter, and maybe they didn't know, of course. But it doesn't mention the job code. It doesn't mention the year, month, any information, when it was printed, when it was created, the artwork was created. Obviously, if that information is known, it would have been great to maybe obviously June or May, something like that. But you've got lots of information in here. Obviously, November 1961, it puts brackets for obviously the issue on the, but it probably came out September, I assume. So you've got Jack Kirby, you've got a bit about Jack Kirby, Challenge of the Unknown, Steve Ditko, and then, but it doesn't, also another thing that's slightly unusual in this is it doesn't always have very big pictures of the covers. Which is okay, but you've got lots of examples, obviously the original, this one, The Return of Ant-Man. But you don't have every issue. So you've got something like Tales to Astonish, 35, but you might not have 36, 37, 38. I don't know which ones, but there are gaps. I'm just pointing out. Now, some do seem to get entries all the way through. Spider-Man, lots of Spider-Man. But obviously Millie the Model, if you're coming to Millie Model, as it doesn't say that it's to do with heroes, it really should be all the Marvel Comics. Well, Linda Carter, Student Nurse, those sort of classic ones that obviously everyone knows. Patsy and her pals, or Patsy and whatever. There's Kate. There was a number of these sort of Millie the Model kind of books. So you've got Strange Tales 101. Now, also, it doesn't, of course, include all the monster books, which I think of as part of, I think, could have mentioned a little blurb about them. Fantastic Four #9. Again, like I said, still doesn't have the numbering or the dates for it. So you've got Incredible Hulk issue 5, but then when did it come out? But it does include a lot of detail about, like I say, the Hulk's personality continues to deteriorate. etc., etc. And you've got, again, a lovely picture there, obviously, of the Incredible Hulk. And then you've got, so you can get Justice League of America gets some mention. But you've also got some original art pages, which is always good. And this one's from, obviously, a very early, Avengers 1. Okay, Avengers 1. Which is slightly odd because it's not on a page with Avengers 1, but I guess that's, it's on the other page. So you've got Avengers 1. It's obviously got a bit of detail about, obviously, Ant-Man at the time, obviously, Giant Man was in the next issue. It's very odd, really, that Ant-Man came along, and then, of course, next issue, Giant Man. Talk about confusing. So you've got Amazing Spider-Man 2. It was amazing that that issue was about the same time. So Sgt Fury and his Howling Commandos 1. And also, of course, you've got the Marvel Comics 12 cents. Those sorts of things. It's got fun facts. You've got lots of information about the logo, the comic group logo there. And also Haunted Tank, obviously, because it's talking about Sgt Fury, mentioned about, and also war films. And you've got Spider-Man, Mandrake, obviously because of Doctor Strange. And then you've got the X-Men. You've got, again, another great original page of that. And you've got lots of fun sort of information here, just snippets of information like Daredevil issue 1, given that detail. Stan Lee in the army, got a picture of him there, and so on and so on. There's just page after page after page of vast amounts of. So if you want to get a really comprehensive view of Marvel during the 60s, I think this book is just absolutely superb, absolutely full of stunning, great information. Lots of information I knew, but a lot of information I didn't. And it's got lots and lots of photos. Marvel, bullpen, 1960s, early 70s, got a photo there. Got Flo Steinberg. And that's another thing that I think is really good in this book. You've got here Artie Simek. So you've got Artie Simek, and it's got lots about the people who, in a sense, behind the scenes. Obviously, the letterer, one of the key characters. Just creates this stuff. The letterer. If you didn't have good lettering, you wouldn't read it. So without the lettering, you could have really rubbishy lettering that makes it very hard to read. You'd go, I'm not going to read that. Put it down. So lettering is super important. And it would be nice if someone brought out a book about his lettering, approaches he did, a bit about it. Well, I think he deserves a book, because virtually every book was done by, lettering was done by Artie Simek, which is, so I think lettering is definitely, and same with colouring, the colourist. Very, very important. A book about the production behind the scenes of Marvel would be also great. And this book does at least this one. Not so mysterious after all. Tony Mortellaro. My apologies if I said his name incorrect. And it's got pages upon pages of these sort of people all the way through. And there's obviously Denny O'Neil there. And going all the way through Mighty Thor. Now it's grouped oddly as well. You've got like Mighty Thor 129, 120. 130, 131. So I would have loved if it had been in actual as they came out. But obviously they decided to group them. And then you've got Bill Everett there. And this is weird. You've got Cull. You've got a bit Cull too. But I mean, it's obviously Marie Severin. But since Cull 2 was probably more, obviously, in the 70s. Herb Trimpe, or Trimp, not certain. Never known. Now, obviously got mentioned here, not Brand Eck. Now that doesn't get a mention either. Obviously gets a little picture there, but does it get a mention? Then also Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I bet you Captain Savage doesn't get a mention either. And this game got lots of people behind the scenes, as well as also some great reproduction there from the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. issue 3. And also it's got a lovely bit about I'm not going to be able to find it now. I found it earlier when I was going through this, about Foom and Marvel Mania. I would love to see a book about Marvel Mania. It gives a really good big blurb about Marvel Mania. And it's, well, a book collecting the Marvel Mania magazines, the catalogue. Also Foom would be absolute, and also maybe background sort of documentation for Marvel would be really, really good. Obviously, they get to a certain degree, but maybe like the synopsis that went behind to actually create these. I'm certain that artists drew out sort of plans about how they would. Some must have survived. So that would be a lovely book if they brought out a sort of rarities book like that. A bit like the Marvel Vault book that came out with some sort of things like that. But right, well, that's the run through this. I think this is just amazing. And it finishes, oddly, on Captain America 109. Very old talk, but it sort of describes about the changes, obviously, that were going at this point. Swan song for, obviously, Kirby at that point, and that's it. And then you've got then a little bit of, obviously, Twomorrows, and obviously the stuff that was at the time. So that's it. Marvel Comics in the 1960s. I love this book. This book is just superb. It's one of those books you pick up and you think, you know what, and then you can read it for the next 20 or 30 minutes and you can just find out so much about particular issues. And quite often when I think, oh, that Iron Man or something, you go and just quickly read up Tales of Suspense 57, 58, 59, etc. You can just get a feeling for what was happening at the time and understand it a little bit more, not just reading the comic. So the comic's great, of course, but it's also nice to get a bit of behind the scenes. And likewise, it's another thing that I say with the back, the creators. It's great that they include all of the creators and not just, obviously, the brilliant ones, obviously, Jack Kirby, etc., but some of the other production people. And that also deserves, I think, a massive book as well about all those sort of people. So that's my tuppence on that subject as well. Yeah, Marvel Comics in the 1960s, a thoroughly brilliant book. I loved this book. Totally recommended.